To Money Talks, your intel on the Philippine markets and the economy. I'm Pauline Verzosa, sitting in for Cathy Yang. In the headlines, the Federal Reserve cut U.S. interest rate for the first time since December and signaled more cuts before the year ends. Newly elected House Speaker Boji D promises close scrutiny of the 2026 national budget. And the Budget Department says infrastructure spending likely won't be significantly affected by investigation into flood control projects.
Project.
Well, you're now looking at a live shot from the Senate as the Blue Ribbon Committee continues its investigation into alleged anomalies in flood control projects. This is the first time that Senator Panfilo Lacson is leading the committee after Senator Rodante Marcoleta was removed as chairman following a change of leadership last September 8. Lacson previously said he is adopting a blindfold mentality after former Bulacan Assistant District Engineer Bryce Hernandez accused Senators Joel Villanueva and Jinggoy Estrada of receiving kickbacks from flood control projects. Earlier, we also saw Public Works and Highways Secretary Vince Dizon in attendance, as well as other government officials and several contractors. You can catch the live stream of that hearing on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, One News. A newly elected Speaker Faustino Boji D III vows reforms and accountability at the House of Representatives. In his speech, the Isabela 6th District Representative promised not to shield anyone implicated in the ongoing investigation into alleged anomalies in flood control projects. He also assured close scrutiny of the 2026 budget, saying every peso must match the needs of Filipinos. D appealed to the public for renewed trust in Congress, pledging genuine service and fairness under his watch. He replaced Congressman Martin Romualdez, who resigned from his post amid allegations of being involved in the flood control scandal.
Kung meron mang mga pangalang nabanggit sa mga pagdinig na ito, may mga tamang forum para sila ay makapagpaliwanag. No rank, no ally, no office will be spared from accountability. Sa ating pong mga kababayan, hinihiling ko po na magpatuloy tayong magmatsyag at magbantay. Tanging kayo lamang po ang makakapagsabi at makakapagpasya kung dapat bang ibigay ninyo muli ang tiwala sa amin.
Well, the Budget Department says infrastructure spending is unlikely to be significantly affected by the ongoing investigation into flood control projects. Secretary Amena Pangandaman told the business world only projects found with irregularities may be halted, but ongoing and compliant ones will continue even with the creation of the Independent Commission on Infrastructure, or ICI. For her part, DepDev Undersecretary Rosemarie Edilion said projects will proceed unless suspension orders are issued. President Bongbong Marcos signed into law a measure amending the Right-of-Way, or RO Act, allowing the government to acquire more land for big-ticket infrastructure projects. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro confirmed to Business World that the president signed and approved the bill, but a copy has yet to be released. The Reformed Act is a priority legislation of the administration aiming to streamline land acquisition for national projects, including public-private partnerships. The law also applies to private firms with eminent domain rights in sectors including electricity, petroleum, and water, and clarifies rules on subterranean rights of way. For more on these stories, check out the Business World online. And the big news, the U.S. Federal Reserve has approved its first rate cut of the year in light of weaknesses confronting the labor market. The Fed has lowered interest rates by 25 basis points to a range of 4% to 4.25%. President Donald Trump's newest pick as Fed Governor Stephen Miran was the lone dissenter preferring a half-point rate cut. Meantime, Fed Chair Jerome Powell attributed the rate cut to what he called a downside risk turning into reality, which is that job growth has sharply slowed. Until this month, the Fed had been reluctant to lower rates despite economic uncertainties and intense pressure from Trump due to a firm labor market and stubborn inflation. But with the equation changing, it's time for the Fed to make a risk management move, as Powell described it.
In the near term, risks to inflation are tilted to the upside and risks to employment to the downside. A challenging situation. With downside risks to employment having increased, the balance of risks has shifted. With today's decision, we remain well positioned to respond in a timely way to potential economic developments. We will continue to determine the appropriate stance of monetary policy based on the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks.
A narrow majority of policymakers is penciling in rate cuts at both Fed meetings in October and December, while 7 are projecting a status quo. Meanwhile, 2 policymakers see just one more easing. On Tuesday, Finance Secretary Ralph Recto floated the possibility of one more BSP rate cut. He said, though, that the central bank could implement 2 safe cuts of 25 basis points each at its policy meeting on October 9 and December 11. According to Recto, the BSP's decision would hinge on the Fed's moves and inflation figures in the coming months. And now let's break down the Fed's quarter-point rate cut and its implications on Philippine monetary policy, as well as the changing of House leadership, with Emmanuel Leco, President and Chief Economist at Credit Rating and Investor Services Philippines Incorporated, and a fellow at the Center for People Empowerment in Governance, or CENPEG. Good morning, Noel, and thanks for joining us here on Money Talks.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, well, as expected, the U.S. Federal Reserve cut rates by 25 basis points. I mean, this was widely anticipated and highly scrutinized. What's your take? And tell us, how is this different from the Fed's previous decisions in recent years?
Well, in the beginning, we recall that the Federal Reserve did not want to move the tax rate or the interest rate because of its concerns on inflation. But now it appears that the Federal Reserve has now looked at jobs creation versus inflation risk. So the move by the Federal Reserve is expected to create or stimulate the U.S. economy by the consumers spending more and not being so concerned about the interest rate. But of course, there will always be the concern about inflation. And this is the tightrope that the Federal Reserve is trying to balance in. Do you cut the interest rate so that it can stimulate spending and hopefully jobs creation, or risk inflation, which can also create a downturn for the economy? So hopefully, the interest rate cut by the Federal Reserve will be favorable to the U.S. economy. That can also result in Philippine economy benefiting from the rate cut. But I think that is a more complicated issue for the Philippines.
All right, Noel, well, let's bring this closer to home. How exactly will the Fed's decision and the possibility of 2 more cuts happening within the year affect the Bangko Central's own policy decision come October?
Well, first, in the U.S., consumer interest rates like car purchases of cars, homes, and credit cards will be benefited by the lower interest rate. And therefore, the U.S. is expecting that through more vigorous consumer spending, the U.S. economy will be favored and get stronger. Now, will the Philippines, should the Philippines follow suit and therefore cut interest rate? I think that will create also impact on the foreign currency exchange rate between the Philippines and the U.S. If the U.S. interest rate is higher than the Philippine interest rate, of course, investors will be more attracted to U.S. or dollar-denominated assets. But of course, in the Philippines, we have a 1% higher than the U.S. interest rate. But of course, that is also mitigated by the foreign exchange currency exchange between the Philippines and the U.S.
Well, you also have Finance Secretary Ralph Recto penciling in 2 rate cuts that he described as safe. And with the interest rate differential narrowing and inflation still picking up, I mean, is there still space for our central bank to ease rates, Noel?
I'm not sure that will be beneficial for us, although for the consumers, of course, a lower interest rate is always better for us. But then in terms of stimulating the economy, would the lower interest rate do its job? I think the Philippine economy needs more than an interest rate cut. We also have a number of issues that the Philippine government, the Bangko Sentral, the Department of Finance will also have to address.
Well, Noel, also in the headlines is the change in leadership at the lower house. We now have a new speaker in Boji D, and he said the House will be run differently. How do you think he should facilitate the budget process to ensure transparency? I mean, he did say already that every centavo of the government will be aligned with the needs of Filipinos. What reforms could be implemented within his own backyard?
Well, he's coming in when the national economic or the spending program has already been submitted to Congress. And already analysts are seeing a lot of red flags in this budget. Now, will the change in leadership of the House be able to address the concerns of the Filipino people? I think the biggest problem with the House leadership is that regaining the trust and confidence of the Filipino people. More than the actual budget flow, the budget hearings, and more of the expenditure being submitted by the Department of Budget and Management, there is already an ongoing distrust, mistrust, or lack of confidence by the Filipino people on the budgeting process. And that is why we've been hearing about the kind of national protest, the kind of magnitude, widespread protest happening on Sunday. Will the new speaker be able to pacify the anger of the people and regain its confidence? And I think in terms of the process itself, the House should be able to, or should open the process more to the civil society organizations. We have civil society organizations participating in the hearing, but it's not actually participation because they are not allowed to speak. They are not allowed to actually vote, and therefore the participation of the civil society is very, very limited. And I was hoping that the House leadership should be able to open further the participation of civil society if they want to regain the trust and confidence of the Filipino people in the budget process.
In other words, a more active participation from civil society groups. But Noel, since you already mentioned about the looming protest happening on September 21, is the business community concerned about this? How is investor confidence right now amid all this political noise?
Actually, a number of major business organizations have already made their statements that they would like a more transparent and more vigorous fight against corruption. This is the first time that major business organizations spoke as one entity. And I'm not sure if the Philippine government is hearing that, but perhaps they are. Reason for maybe changing the Senate President, the Speaker of the House, but then there is so much more that the government needs to do in order to pacify or even convince the Filipino people that in the middle of all this widespread corruption that is causing the people to drown in widespread flooding in the country today, I hope that they are able to respond better, and I hope they are able to address the concerns of the Filipino people against corruption.
You're right, Noel. I mean, you have civil society groups, even the church, and now business leaders speaking up on this. But I wanted to get your thoughts. How does the business community take the Independent Commission for Infrastructure, now that the ICI has already been constituted? What does it think about the ongoing investigations into flood control anomalies? And what is the effect on the Philippines, because we are an emerging market?
Most of the business organizations are hopeful. And I think it will be terrible for the Independent Commission to frustrate them, because right now the business organizations feeling that they are playing the field fairly, paying taxes, and yet the Philippine government, the entities that are supposed to protect the finances of the Filipino people, are not doing their job. So it's up to the Independent Commission to convince not only the business sector, but the Filipino people at large. But, you know, there are already agencies and entities. There is the Ombudsman, there is the Commission on Audit, and there is the Department of Budget and Management that if the systems were in place, why did they not work to avoid that widespread corruption happening today in the country? In the trillions, we cannot stop doing this computation. During the Napoles time, we were only talking about billions. And now I think the corrupt practices, or the corrupt people, they learned the job. They are gaming the system. Now they are able to game the system, and now they're raking in trillions of pesos in people's money. Mm-hmm. And that is really terrible.
You're right, and I think what really made it concrete for all of us is upon seeing that photo of wads of cash on the table, seeing millions and millions of pesos go to alleged kickbacks. But Noel, are you optimistic that all these hearings being done by Congress, you have in the Senate, it's being led by the Blue Ribbon Committee, at the lower house, it's the Infracom, will this lead to stronger anti-corruption legislation?
I hope so, but it will be very, very difficult considering that many of those involved are in the legislation or part of the legislature. So right now what we are seeing is that personalities who were involved in this issue, they're basically defending themselves, trying to extricate themselves from this system. But unfortunately, I think the evidences, the proofs, and I hope the Independent Commission is able to unearth them and present them to the proper forum. But then again, we will still have to go through the judiciary. And hopefully, unlike what happened in the Napoles issue, that the culprits, the ultimate culprits of this corruption in our country today will be made answerable to this crime against the people.
Mm-hmm. But here's something interesting, Noel. On the flip side, there was a study done by the University of Chicago that says stronger anti-corruption legislation actually stimulates or leads to economic growth and entrepreneurship. So if we live in an ideal world, is this one silver lining we can look forward to?
Oh, definitely. And I think it's not just that Chicago study that showed that, but there are also other cases. Cases in Hong Kong, cases in Singapore, cases in other countries where they showed deliberate and very strong political will to fight corruption that led to improvement in the lives of their people. Definitely, we're not actually giving up hopes, but we'd like to see more results. And we'd like to see results the soonest time possible, because the patience of the people is not unlimited, you know. And they are seeing examples of how civil society, citizens, the people in other countries have taken the law into their hands, which is going to be terrible for us, because that will set us back in a very, very, very bad way. So I hope that the government, those who are with the authority and responsibility to address this issue, they take heed, listen to the people. The corruption, magnitude of corruption happening in the country is just too much to bear. People are dying, people are drowning.
All right, Noel, well, before we let you go, the president has just signed a new law amending the Right-of-Way Act, allowing the government to acquire more land for big-ticket infrastructure projects. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that is great. However, we have had a number of right-of-way laws and even constitutionally protected the right-of-way when the people or the government declares its public domain or eminent public domain. The law should be able to pursue the objectives, the goals of the government, and support the initiatives of the government. But you know, what would be missing here, or what would be critical here, is political will. You know, I have seen a number of bridges or a number of pathways that will cross major neighborhoods of the rich people, and what they do is, instead of following the straight line, they will curve around the neighborhoods because they could not touch the strength, the voice of the economically powerful elite of the country. So I think, again, we can have a number of right-of-way laws, the best laws that we have. However, if the political will in our government leadership is lacking, that will just come to naught. And hopefully that doesn't happen.
All right, well, we'll leave that there for now. Thank you very much for your time and your insights, Emmanuel Leco of Senpec. Thanks, Noel. You are watching Money Talks. We'll take a look at the markets when we return. Plus, the highlights of the 23rd Asian Carriers Conference in Cebu. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back to Money Talks. I'm Pauline Brazosa. U.S. markets ended Wednesday's session mixed following the Fed's quarter-point rate cut. The Dow rose by over 0.5%. The Nasdaq tumbled by 0.33%, while the S&P 500 slid by 0.1%. U.S. 10-year Treasury yields ticked up to 4.073%, while gold prices declined after reaching fresh highs in the past few days, settling at $36.81 per troy ounce. And U.S. futures point to gains when the markets open later tonight, Manila time. The Nasdaq is up by 0.4%. The S&P 500 climbs by 1/3%, and the Dow advances by 0.2%. Asian markets are a mixed bag in the first hour of trading this Thursday. Japan's Nikkei 225 is up by 0.6%, while South Korea's Kospi climbs by 0.5%. Meantime, Australia's ASX 200 slides over 0.5%. And now let's take a quick check on the Philippine markets. The PSEI opens this Thursday lower by 1/3% at 6189.83. The stock market returned above the 6200 level yesterday, Wednesday, rising by over 1% ahead of the Fed rate decision. The broader all shares index climbed by 0.6%, with all sectoral gauges in the green, led by services. And as for the Philippine peso, it opens today weaker at 56.97 to the dollar. The peso closed yesterday a tad stronger at 56.89 against the greenback. And the 10-year government bond yields went virtually unchanged at 5.940%. Now, startups in the Philippines have secured over $86 million in equity funding, down 55% from a year ago. A report by corporate venture capital firm Kickstart Ventures and Singapore-based media company Deal Street Asia shows the country lags most Southeast Asian neighbors. The country raised about 4.9 billion pesos from 15 deals in 6 months, down from nearly 11 billion pesos last year. By deal value, it trailed Singapore, Vietnam, and Malaysia, surpassing only Indonesia and Thailand. The report also said investors are now more selective, favoring companies with strong governance and clear paths to profitability. Despite the slowdown, the sector remains supported by a growing middle class, digital-savvy youth, and rising household spending. And top telecom executives and technology leaders from across Asia gathered in Cebu for the 23rd Asian Carriers Conference. This year's edition highlights innovation beyond connectivity. Dale Israel of One News Cebu reports.
Amid the proliferation of artificial intelligence, Singaporean human connection expert Simon Heng reminded delegates of the 23rd Asian Carriers Conference 2025 we should not forget the human aspect in advancement of technology. She said, establishing rapport and relationship among people will greatly affect the success of AI technology as the country prepares modern connectivity.
And so in order to ensure our survival, and we became dominant of all species, so it really worked out well for us, we learned to build human connection.
The annual event brings together the top telecommunications company and mobile phone manufacturers across the continent. About 1,000 delegates joined this year's activities last Tuesday, September 16. They showcased their latest technology at the different booths, where participants had a chance to immerse themselves. At the Huawei booth, for example, one can play chess with a robot player. The Philippines' very own PLDT Global, who is a primary host to the event, assured the public that they are preparing beyond just providing the country with connectivity.
The main theme of this event is really how to shape the future beyond connectivity. And PLDT is supporting this event for the past 20 years because we believed that we need to lay down the foundation for the future. Beyond connectivity, we need to provide them what they need on a daily basis. We need to consolidate the data that we're collecting right now. We need to make sure that we be able to correlate it according to their daily routines and other requirements. So moving forward, we are always here to make sure that our network is reliable, that it's safe, and at the same time, it is supporting the customer needs.
Dale Israel, One News, Cebu.
And in sports, Alas Pilipinas stand on the brink of history in the 2025 FIVB Men's World Championship. With a 1-1 record in Pool A, the host squad needs just one more big win to secure a spot in the round of 16. Their final challenge is a clash with powerhouse Iran later today at the Mall of Asia Arena. And a win over Iran would mark the country's first ever advance to the knockout stage in the FIVB Worlds. that's it for Money Talks this Thursday. I'm Felipe Verzosa sitting in for Cathy Yang. Catch us again tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. here on One News. Have a great day ahead.